You're sitting in an open plan office. Someone's playing a video on their phone at the next desk. A soldier walking through an airport in uniform, and his dog spots him from 50 feet away and just detonates, running ears back, the whole body committed. And your eyes go hot. Right there. Fluorescent lights, keyboard clatter, a stranger's phone screen 4 feet away, and your throat closes up. Over a dog you've never met, and a man you'll never know. Not sad, not even close. You wipe your face fast and hope nobody clocked it. Someone did. You catch a coworker not quite looking away in time, and now, for the rest of the afternoon, you're the person who cried at a 15-second video during a normal Tuesday. You're not weak. You're not too much. You're not broken. And you're definitely not the only one. This happens to more people than admit it out loud, because it feels like a system error nobody else's body seems to have. It isn't an error. There's a signal running through your body right now that is older than language, more specific than sadness, and almost nobody ever explains it to you. Here's what you'd probably guess is going on. Your nerves are wired a little raw, a little too close to the surface, and one day you'll toughen up. That's the story most people quietly tell themselves at midnight after crying at a phone commercial. It's not that. Something stranger is happening, and it starts with a question almost nobody thinks to ask. What actually is a tear, chemically? Call this first mechanism the valve. In the early 1980s, a biochemist named William Frey ran an experiment that sounds almost too simple to matter. He collected two kinds of tears from the same people: tears from cutting onions and tears from watching something that genuinely moved them. Same eyes, same tear ducts, same salt water, right? Wrong. The emotional tears carried significantly more protein than the onion tears. Different chemistry, different cargo actually leaving the body. Picture it the way you'd picture a kettle building up steam with nowhere to go. The pressure doesn't disappear on its own. It needs an exit built into the system, or it just sits there, tightening your chest, humming under a headache you can't quite place. Crying is that exit valve, already installed, already plumbed in, waiting for the pressure to get high enough to pop it open. Frey's theory was that emotional crying works like a pressure valve on a kettle, a literal exit route for stress chemicals your body has been quietly stockpiling. Cortisol, manganese, the hormone ACTH, the one your brain releases when it's under strain. Cry, and some of that chemical weight physically leaves through your face. Your tear ducts aren't just leaking water, they're doing laundry nobody told you about. That explains why a cry can leave you drained afterward, like something got flushed out. It does not explain why the flush happens over a stranger's dog instead of your actual problems. For that, the valve theory has to hand off to something stranger, because a leak doesn't choose its moment. Something else in you is doing the choosing. There's a second mechanism running underneath the valve, and this one's less about chemistry and more about who's in the room. Call it the signal. A researcher in the Netherlands named Ad Wingerhoets has spent decades on a strange fact most people never sit with. Humans are the only species on Earth confirmed to produce emotional tears. Not whimper, not wail. Plenty of animals do that. Cry with visible tears as an emotional response on a face built to be looked at. Just us. When Wingerhoets and his team measured what tears actually do to the people around you, the results reframed the whole thing. People are measurably more willing to help someone who's crying, not someone who's shouting, not someone calmly explaining a problem, someone with visible tears on their face. The tears alone shift how safe and trustworthy you read to another person before either of you says a word. And here's the part almost nobody tells you. A loud cry travels far. An infant's wail can be heard down a hallway, across a yard, by anyone in range, including whatever predator might be listening. A tear, on the other hand, only works up close. You have to be near someone to see it glisten. Evolutionarily speaking, tears are a targeted transmission, a message with a range of maybe 3 feet, built for exactly one kind of audience, someone close enough to actually help. So when your eyes go hot in a room full of near strangers over a stranger's dog, that's not a malfunction. That's an ancient trust broadcast running at exactly the range it was built for, triggered by a story your brain reads as real enough to matter, whether or not you consciously believe it is. Which leads to the one thing the signal theory still hasn't explained. You weren't sad watching that video. Nobody was hurt. Nothing was lost. So, what exactly was the tear even signaling? A psychologist named Jonathan Haidt spent years studying a third and separate feeling. Not sadness, not joy, something in between. He named elevation. The tight chest and prickling eyes you get watching someone act with unexpected goodness. A stranger returning a lost wallet with the cash still in it. A nurse holding a dying stranger's hand so they don't go alone. A dog that's waited years and still remembers. Researchers scanning brains while people watched footage like this found the same regions lighting up consistently across completely different people watching the same clip. Which means it isn't random noise. It's a specific, repeatable circuit built to fire at witnessed goodness, the same way fear has a circuit built to fire at a sudden, loud noise. That soldier and dog video wasn't sad. It was moral beauty, compressed into 15 seconds, and your body reacted to it exactly the way it's designed to. The tears weren't a crack in your composure. They were your nervous system standing up and applauding. And notice something else about that moment. You'd never met either of them. It didn't matter. Your emotional circuitry was never built with a filter for stranger on a screen versus person in the room. It reacts to what it's shown, not to who's technically involved. That's also why a movie can make you cry over people who were never born, and why a stranger's wedding video on your feed can catch you the same way a friend's would. The system doesn't check IDs. It just checks whether what it's watching looks like goodness or loss or both at once. But that only explains why the trigger fired. It still leaves the biggest question sitting there, unanswered. Plenty of people watched that same video and felt nothing. Why you? Why does your alarm sit lower than everyone else's? For the valve, for the signal, for elevation, for all of it. To answer that, you have to go back further than the office, further than the video, back to before you could talk. Call this fourth piece the volume knob, because it's the one that decides how loud everything else on this list gets played. A psychologist named Elaine Aron spent years researching a trait she eventually named sensory processing sensitivity, what most people now call being a highly sensitive person. Her research places it at roughly 15 to 30% of the population. Not a disorder, not a phase. A nervous system built, from birth, to process incoming information more deeply than most. Sounds, faces, emotional tone, the tiny shift in someone's voice half a second before they say something disappointing. The one flickering light in a room full of steady ones. Then, as a kid, this probably looked like crying easily at movies, at being scolded, at other children getting hurt on the playground even when it wasn't you. Somewhere along the way, you likely learned to clamp down on it, because crying easily gets you labeled, and nobody wants the label. Now, the trait never left. It just got a lid. And every so often, a dog running through an airport, a co-worker being unexpectedly kind on a bad day, a song that catches you off guard in the car. The lid slips, and the exact same nervous system that's been running since you were an infant does precisely what it was built to do. Here's the part that should sting a little less than you'd expect. Aaron's research keeps circling back to the same trade off over and over. People who process sensory and emotional information this deeply also tend to catch things other people flat out miss. The one person in a group who's quietly having a bad day 3 sentences before they say anything. The half-second pause in someone's voice before an apology that isn't really an apology. This was never a flaw riding shotgun with a strength. It's the same wiring producing both. Your alarm sits lower because your radar sits sharper, and you don't get to keep the radar and switch off the alarm. They're the same circuit. And there's a fifth piece, one that explains why this looks so different from person to person. Call it the silencer. Here's the part that will make some of this click into place. Researchers have found no meaningful difference in how much infant boys and infant girls cry. None. The gap that shows up later in life, women reporting roughly 3 to 4 times as many crying episodes a year as men in study after study, isn't there at birth. It gets built. Part of it is chemical. Testosterone appears to raise the threshold for crying, while prolactin, present at higher levels in women, appears to lower it. But the researchers studying this are clear that biology is only half the story. The other half is what happens to a 7-year-old boy the third time he's told to stop crying and be a man. And what happens to the version of him that grows into an adult, carrying the same sensitive wiring with a much heavier lid welded on top of it. The trait doesn't vanish. It just gets rerouted into headaches, into short tempers, into a chest that goes tight in the car with nowhere to put it. Whoever you are, whatever silencer got bolted onto you along the way, the original signal is still running underneath it, waiting for a gap. There's also a biological dimension worth understanding, and it's the twist most people never get to because they're too busy trying to stop themselves from crying to ask what a cry actually does to a body once it's allowed to happen. Call this last one the reset, and it's the one worth remembering the next time you feel it coming on. A psychophysiologist named James Gross, working out of Berkeley, spent years tracking what a body actually does during and after a cry, heart rate monitors and all. The finding that keeps replicating is almost the opposite of what you'd expect. The tears themselves don't calm you down. What calms you down is what happens right after they stop. Your heart rate drops, your breathing slows. Your whole nervous system steps down from high alert on a timer you don't consciously control. The cry isn't the collapse. It's the mechanism running the recovery. Which means the thing you've spent years trying to swallow before anyone notices is biologically the fastest reset button your body owns. Holding it in doesn't make you stronger. It just means you skip the part where your body was about to feel better. So the next time your eyes go hot over something small, in front of people who are absolutely going to notice, a video, a commercial, a stray kindness from someone you barely know, you don't have to brace for it like a leak in the hull. It isn't a malfunction. It's the valve doing laundry, the signal choosing its range, elevation standing up and applauding, the volume knob turned up since birth, all running through a nervous system that was paying closer attention than everyone else's the entire time, and quietly resetting itself the moment you finally let it finish. Think about the last time it caught you off guard. Where were you? Who was close enough to actually see it? That person didn't think less of you. Whether or not they knew it, some very old part of their brain just quietly moved a little closer. If this explains something you've been quietly embarrassed about for years, do me a favor and subscribe. There are people out there right now who need this explained to them too. And if you've ever caught yourself replaying an argument for hours after it's already over, rehearsing the perfect comeback nobody will ever hear, that one's a companion piece to this. It's right here.